Travel and Things, in association with Rugged Wear, that's real people, real clothing, real solutions, presents In Conversation With. I am your host, David Batsafin, and today I am joined by the authors of this particular book, Excluded Predators. That's Andrew Rae and Peter Neville. Good morning, gents. How are you doing?
Morning, David. All well, thanks. Thanks for having us.
It's only a pleasure. Where does today find you?
In my office at home on the East Rand in Germiston.
Okay, I shan't hold that against you. And luckily, my Germiston visa is still valid for Zoom. So hence we're having this. So before we get into the book and the reasons for the book, etc., talk us through who Andrew and Peter are.
Okay, I'll start. I've been Andrew Rae. I've been a safari guide for 30 years, mostly working in the industry for other folk, so game lodges and the development of various wildlife reserves and expanded reserves throughout South Africa, and a 2-year stint in Botswana. Got this crazy notion in my early 40s that I could do some of the stuff now for myself, because I thought I knew enough about it. And around 8 years ago, had this notion to start a private safari brand, branded on a database of clientele that just kept coming back to have more of the same with the likes of me, but also envisaged getting beyond Southern Africa, which was a gambit I knew pretty well, and going and searching for frontiers elsewhere. And aside from the last 2 strange years we've just had, we've had the most incredible adventures in countries like Ethiopia and Uganda and Madagascar, just really in wildlife immersion safaris, all of them tailored and privately guided by myself. And Peter has joined in that respect as a guide as well. So that's my story in a nutshell.
Okay, because I do like the blurb in the press release that I got with the book. It says that a great safari always depends on the quality of the guiding, and I think you're absolutely true, because book knowledge can be regurgitated so easily. And Peter, I'm not ignoring you, and you'll find nowadays that your guests have Googleized everything before they get on the vehicle, and they believe that they know more than you. So you're reliant on anecdotal stuff and your own experiences to make their experience something different from Google. Peter, I know that you were a professional pet shrink. Did you have to shrink the pets or shrink their owners?
Well, that would be a trade secret, I guess. But the truth is, a dog
is that Dr. Klein privilege?
It is, put it this way, a dog and cat never got so smart as to pay my bills, so I guess it was the owners I was dealing with. But that was my first life, and I did that for 30 years, wrote a lot of books and traveled the world lecturing. I was based at the Ohio State University for 20 years, trying to educate America. I only partially succeeded in some areas.
I'm going to glide over that one. I'm going to let you fall into that trap, and I'm not following.
But these days I find myself as a Brexit refugee.
Okay.
And I moved to Finland about 5 years ago with my partner Stella, who's been on safari a few times with Andrew and myself, and decided that that life was over and it was time to do something new. I met Andrew, having asked him to run a safari for my kids and friends back in 2016. And just realized that, this was the guy and this was the continent where I needed to be. And so I tried to make myself useful for Andrew, tried to find him lots of clients, help his business get going. And the rest is kind of history now. We've been mucking around together in various countries, looking after all sorts of amazing clients. My role is mainly to talk behavior when we find particularly a predator. Because that's kind of where I come from, the modified versions in cats and dogs, and how their brains work, how their emotional systems stack up when they're hunting, when they're playing, when they're resting and defending themselves, and so on. So this is a joy. I'm in heaven, and I do have to go. I do have to go back to Europe at some point, but I've been out here since the beginning of April now, and here we go. It's
looking at what's happening in Dover at the moment. I think you stay exactly where you are, because the queues for the holidays to get across to Europe from England and back are just horrendous. So I think the bush and Germiston is the best place to be.
Sorry, yeah, there was a drag on.
It was a glitch. I was saying at the moment, it seems that South Africa is the place to be, because if you're trying to do a holiday from Europe to England or vice versa at the moment, the Channel is not the place you want. You don't want to be sitting in Dover for 7 hours.
Yeah, Dover and Heathrow is chaos, you know, with baggage delays and flight delays and all sorts. So no, I'm very happy being outside of there. I'm going to go back to Finland.
So let's talk about the reason for this discussion, which is this: African Predators. It's I was going to say your latest book, your newest book.
For Peter, it's his newest. For Peter, it's his newest, and for me, it's my first. It had a strange evolution, David. It really, well, I think for a lot of first-time authors, I think COVID was a great opportunity, because we all had loads of time, and for safari guides like me, although my office and home base is East Rand, I'm not often here for lengths of time like that. So we were climbing the walls, him in Finland and me here, and thinking of things to keep us out of mischief. Peter's written a series of articles for years for a dog and cat magazine in the UK on behavioral stuff, which he's an expert at. And we conjured up this offer to them of a series of articles on African predators, obviously canines and felines, and their ilk, their associated species that are similar. And so started a monthly series. And then we got a whole bunch of our photography mates, who are way better at taking pictures than we are, to delve into their respective photo libraries. They were also bored out of their minds during COVID. And this collaborative kind of thing happened for this magazine. And when we were done, we sort of looked at it and thought, well, gee, there's a little kind of booklet in here that could be quite interesting, not just in terms of it as a field guide concept, but also we wanted it to apply some anecdotal stuff to it, that it would be an interesting read, and visually, quite nice to look at as well. And African Predators was the result.
Okay. Yeah. So are there predators that have been excluded for any particular reason?
Yeah, I don't think we've got striped hyena in there. It's primarily because in all the times that we've guided East Africa, we have yet to see one. So we just felt it wouldn't be fair to wax lyrical about something we had no knowledge of. So that's I think a fairly obvious exclusion from the book, although they are in the space as a species, particularly Eastern Africa and the Horn of Africa. And then really small things, so we haven't gone down to the minutiae, the really small little mongooses and things of that ilk. We sort of stopped at the viverrids in terms of size, and thought, well, let's look at that. We may go further. We're not sure, but
African Predators, the sequel.
That's it, 2.0 or whatever.
African herbivores, perhaps.
No,
what African Predators eat.
The one thing your book has done for me is it's put a new #1 on my I need to see list, which is the serval, because I've never seen in the wild. I ticked off pangolin and aardvark in the last 2 years after 53-year waits for both of those. I've seen both bat-eared fox and aardvark. I've in fact got a picture of both of them in the same space. And then I saw your serval and I thought, hang on a second, I've not seen one of these. So let's bump that to #1, and it'll probably take me another 40 years to see.
They pop up in some surprising places. We've just finished a conservation safari hosting clients from the UK, and one of the reserves that we were in for that was Pilanesberg, just as a kind of
kidding?
Yeah, an intro springboard before we went up into Limpopo and on into Botswana. And we had a great serval sighting in Pilanesberg, of all places. I was as gobsmacked as anybody. Yeah, amazing sight. Daylight sighting nogal. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Peter, do you have any favorites in the book?
I have favourites that I haven't seen, and I'm instantly envious of your pangolin and also your aardwolf, because I haven't seen either of those.
You're working on it.
But I have seen aardvark, so I'm getting there. Serval I've seen plenty of, but not this year until that one popped up in our binoculars. But things that I also hadn't seen much of before was civet, and we keep bumping into them this year. They're all over the place. Civets and genets everywhere. I think the ones that I love seeing, because it, like you, it took me, years and years and years to see more than a tail and a backside of a leopard. When I finally saw one, it's so enthralling. And actually, one of the things that happened when Andrew and I first went on safari together was he popped a female leopard also in Pilanesberg, right in front of us for about 20 minutes. Yeah. And since then, these last few months, we've seen them up trees, we've seen them with kills, we've seen them rolling around. We can't miss them these days. So, but every time I see one, it's still
special.
Very,
and if you go to, I'm not going to mention the camp by name, but if you go to one particular camp, in fact, 2 camps in Sabi Sands, the leopards during COVID have taken over the camp. So you'll find
footage,
you've seen the footage, specifically at the one camp. The female lies at the swimming pool and drinks the water.
Unreal.
Yeah. My other big favorite, of course, is African wild dogs, because back in the early 2000s, I used to run safaris up to Limpopo, where a friend of mine's student who's doing her PhD on them and had a radio collar, and we could find them and so on. So, but I love these guys, and we're involved as Rae Safaris with a not-for-profit called Worthwhile Africa that has so far raised money to help the conservationists study and protect and monitor the species. So we've been paying for radio collars and stuff like that, and trail cameras. And every time we go, therefore, we get the best sightings, we get the best contact, and we get to actually help the guys with the darting process and so on. So wild dogs, that's,
I can feel your passion. I mean, there's nothing nicer than a wild dog sighting, unless you have a very sensitive nose, in which case I've been on vehicles where guests have gone, these dogs stink. I go, yes, but that's special. Suck it up. It's as simple as that.
Hey, don't get sprayed by a civet either.
Well, there you go. That's true enough. But you were talking about genets. I was driving down our street not but a week ago, and there was one sitting in the middle of the road.
Wow! Amazing.
We get a lot of wildlife because we're very close to Delta Park.
Yes.
So we've had the genets, we've had spotted eagle owls, and then my wife sent me a really terrible picture because the light was behind it. I was away in the bush, and she said, "Can you ID this raptor?" Because I brought the cat inside just in case it was peckish, and it was an African harrier hawk.
Yeah, and amazing.
I've subsequently seen Jeff Lockwood say that there are a couple in the Delta now.
That's right. Yeah,
it's extraordinary sightings. Little sparrowhawks, Vambo sparrowhawks. All of a sudden, they're popping up here. We don't need to go.
I was jumping around in the long wet grass there in January because Jeff had posted about a corn crake that had rocked up there, and I'm a bit of a mad twitcher when I'm not on safari, so I was out there pounding around in the long stuff trying to get it to fly out. Eventually, we got a brief sighting, but that's an amazing little island of nature. Indeed. Delta Park, it really is.
But now, have you gone up north to find this bird that everybody? Now, of course, the moment I mention it, I can't think of it.
This warbler that's up in Palabora, the wood warbler. Man, we were actually at one stage. I nearly AWOL'd from a safari because I was down in Hoedspruit, some American clients, when this first popped up, and I'm like, gee, that's not far away. I wonder if they'd missed me if I just disappeared for half a day. But no, I unfortunately haven't had a moment, David, to go and
hang on, guys. This is all about African predators. It's mammals. You bird people.
This is what happens.
I like birds.
I have a categorization or a classification system for birds. It's called acceptable birds and unacceptable birds. Now, acceptable birds is large ones like marabou stork. It's pretty ones like parrots. It's ones with beautiful songs, or it's ones with interesting behavior, or frankly edible ones. Now, after that, everything is either a small, grey, unobtrusive, irrelevant bird, or a brown, small, unobtrusive, irrelevant bird.
A wood warbler would be an unacceptable bird in Lord Neville's categorization.
Okay, so let's get back on track. For people who have joined in the middle of this conversation, I'm talking to Andrew Rae and Peter Neville, co-authors of a book called African Predators. It has no birds in it, none, unless the birds are in the animal and then we don't know about it. Do either of you have a special story or anecdote related? You see, I'm bringing it back, Peter, related to one of the animals in this book.
Well, you know, that's a tough one on the basis of a 3-decade career doing this kind of stuff. But I mean, I think if I had to pick a funny one, I used to, back in the day, towards the beginning of my career, I used to be a guide out of the lodges in the Manyeleti, and one of them, I won't mention names, it's since changed its name anyway, but in that neck of the woods adjacent to the Kruger, a private or expanded part of the greater Kruger, I had an amazing colleague, a Shangaan tracker named Olvert, who now is a senior guide in Madikwe, amazing guy, also a career safari guide and still one of our good friends. And Ollie and I, both young guys, and we found these lion tracks, and we had clients that were just super eager to see lions. And it was early one morning, it was winter. I remember I'd consumed an irresponsible amount of coffee at the Rusk coffee thing before you start the drive. And we got off together, and I thought the two of us let's make quick work of this, find them, hopefully they're sitting down, and then we can orientate the guests into the sighting. So we left them on the vehicle saying, not long, we're off now to quickly find where these kitty cats are, grabbed the rifle, and the two of us went in hot pursuit. And the tracking was really easy across a fairly open sandy patch. It was, you know, farm fresh stuff. We realized we were right on them. And then it went, and they weren't sitting. They kept walking, and at certain stages they were trotting, and we were like, oh no, this is getting longer and more protracted than we thought. Until eventually we got onto some really stony kind of rocky ground where the tracks started to become less obvious, and some cloud moved in, and the tracks, started to become difficult to read. And eventually we just ran out of any kind of reasonable sign of this. By that stage, my kidneys were popping, my eyeballs were floating, and I needed to use the loo. And Ollie had the same problem. And so we both chose this kind of fairly large and dense euclea, a quarry, to relieve ourselves in. And we're busy doing that, rifle on the shoulder, and various other bits and pieces out and in display and being used. And suddenly there was this low growl emanating from the bush, and we realized that we'd been urinating on one of the lions that we'd been tracking. And we kind of slowly kind of extracted ourselves, holding completely the wrong weapon for the occasion. And eventually, some decorum took place, and we snuck back. Lions ran away, and the sighting never happened. But yeah, that story kind of springs to mind about lions.
So that's where the idiom "I'd rather be pissed off than pissed on" comes from.
There you go. Precisely. Yeah.
Peter, and for you?
Well, it's interesting you asked this because the round 2 of COVID, Andrew and I set about putting all our stories together into a book that's called Memoirs of a Safari Guide. And we joined up with my pal Russell Jones, cartoonist in the UK, and put together about 60 stories, including that one. And that'll be the next thing you'll receive from our publishers. It's just being finalized now, but yeah, I mean, so many stories. My funniest story actually concerns being chased by a black mamba while also out in the bush taking a pee, and being chased at speed, just about getting onto the back of a moving away Land Cruiser as this thing chased me down the streets, or right down the road. But actually, in terms of mammals, I think I go back to early days when I was out driving across the sort of mud flats around Amboseli. And we stopped and decided we were going to have a braai because I'd become South African by then. And so we set it all up and we put the tables out because we were still quite British about it. And we put everything out, laid it all out, and the braai was nicely sizzling with all the sausages and the wors and so on. And then out of nowhere, I mean, we're in the middle of an open plain, but out of nowhere, 7 yowling, yipping, laughing hyena came hurtling towards us. And the response, of course, was 7 people cramming instantly into the back of a what was a Land Rover, you know, sorry, we've moved to Land Cruisers now, but and basically being like sardines in there while the hyenas just demolished the entire thing, including the salad, I might say, which I thought was particularly
as long as they had salad to go with the protein, you can't hold it against it.
But they ate the lot. They ate the lot. They turned over the braai. They chewed half the plates. You know, it was like a bomb had hit the place. And all we heard, you know, when we finally dared to come out as dusk came in, was, you know, chortling hyenas out on the plain somewhere.
Guys, where is the book available? Is it only available online? Is it available in bookstores? How can people get hold of a copy of African Predators?
So,
should they want
Willow Trading are helping us get it out there, and I mean it's brand new. So so it's going to be arriving in all the appropriate bookshops that you'd expect to find something like this. We're also talking to a range of game lodges, etc., to see if they're interested in putting it in their curio shops and that kind of thing. But Willow Trading are handling the output, as it were.
They've also got it on. They've also got it online. So if you go to Willow Trading, you can order one.
I have to say, you talk about buying it as a digital book.
No, this is the hard copy.
Okay, because I was going to say I can't do digital. I like holding a proper book, and there's nothing like the smell the first time you open a book, really.
Yeah, indeed.
And there's nothing like having one under your pillow when you first get your copy, and you carry it around like a chimp carrying a baby. You know, you never let it go. So, but yeah, we will be doing Kindle versions and Amazon versions in due course. But for now, it's all about the hard copy.
Yeah. Now, if people watch this and go, "Oh, I'd like to have a safari planned by these guys," you know, I could do worse. How do they get hold of you?
Okay, so we've got a website, www.Rae Safaris, RAE, which is my surname, safaris.co.za.
Okay.
And that's got a lot of our set departures sort of showcased on there, and a little bit of a story about us and what we're about. And then we're on a couple of social media platforms. If one searches RAE Safaris on Instagram and Facebook, you'll find our pages pretty easily there. Yeah.
Great.
And the good thing is we're expanding our horizons, as Andrew said. We're all over Africa, East Africa, South Africa, but now we're going to the Antarctic in December, and we're going to the Galapagos. We've got 2 trips to the Galapagos in 2024.
Yeah.
So, you know,
I'm prepared to be your chief cook and bottle washer, although I'm sure I'm not the only one who's offered that.
No, there is quite a line for that.
The Q forms from the left. Is that what you're telling me?
Indeed. Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for chatting to me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've been talking to Andrew Rae and Peter Neville, who are the co-authors of this wonderful little book called African Predators. As you heard, raesafaris.com.
.co.za.
You can find out more about their safaris, and the book will be available where everybody buys their books in the not too distant future. Andrew, Peter, thank you so very much for joining me. It's, as I said, been an absolute pleasure having you as guests.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate your time. Thank you very much.